Before we dive into today's terrifying tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a spine-chilling story. Let's get into it. The Diary.
I just moved into this old house and found a dusty diary hidden under the floorboards. The first entry was from January 5, 2019. Dear Diary. Something bad happened at school today. I saw it before it happened. Since the car accident that left me in a coma for a week, I've been having these visions more and more frequently. What happened today was that my best friend, actually my only friend Amanda, was pushed down the stairs by the popular girl Grace. Amanda was knocked unconscious and had to be taken to the hospital. I tried to warn her beforehand, but she said I was just freaking out again. When I try to tell others about my visions, no one believes me and they call me a freak or a witch. I thought being a sophomore in high school was hard enough, but now, with this strange ability that everyone thinks is fake, I don't know what to do. January 22, 2019. Dear Diary. My mom showed up last night wanting me to go live with her, but my dad refused. He has full custody, so he decides when I can see her, which is usually never. But that's fine. I don't want to see her drugged up. She only shows up to ask for money or find her next fix. My dad isn't any better. He's been drinking more, and that means more beatings for me. He broke down my door, saying it would be easier for him to find me. I don't know what's scarier, the beatings or the visions that warn me they're coming. All I can do is lie on the floor and cover my head while he hits me, sometimes with a belt. I wish this would stop. These visions are both a blessing and a curse. And I'm running out of excuses to tell Amanda about the bruises. She always wants to come over and I feel bad lying to her, but I can't let her get hurt. February 3, 2019. Dear Diary. Something strange is happening. I keep having visions of being stabbed. It's making me very nervous. I've taken serious precautions. Sleeping with a knife under my pillow, keeping the window open in case I need to run, and only sleeping for 20 minutes at a time. Amanda insists that I go to her house, but I ask her to stay at her own. I can't tell her about my dad. She worries too much and might tell her parents, who could forbid her from seeing me. Or Amanda followed me home from school. What do I do? I'm so furious she did that and came into my house. Amanda is staying the night here. The stubborn girl refused to leave even after I cried and told her everything about my dad. She said everything would be fine, but I knew it wouldn't. I need to find out why my dad isn't home for a while, so I'll snoop around. I found a note with scribbles and the date of the accident, various times, and a phone number. It's strange. I showed it to Amanda and she said to call the number, but I'm too scared. I told Amanda to go to sleep. I want this to end and these visions to stop. February 4, 2019. Dear Diary. It's 3 a.m. and my dad just got home after drinking all night. I woke Amanda in a panic, told her to hide under my bed and not come out until he was gone, no matter what she hears or sees. I've already seen the beating and am trying to ensure Amanda stays hidden. My dad starts looking for me, comes into my room, and hits me. After he's done, he says I should have died in the car accident. I remembered the phone number in my pocket. Amanda came out from under the bed crying and hugged me. She wanted me to go with her to her house, but I was thinking about the note. I took out the number and called it. I had a vision of my dad sneaking down the hall. I quickly handed the phone to Amanda and pushed her into the closet. My dad walked past without even looking at me. When I opened the door, I found Amanda on the phone. I took it and heard a male voice saying, "Jim, are you there? After that accident, I got hurt more than I thought. If you need to get rid of your daughter, you'll have to do it yourself." 5,000 wasn't enough. My heart raced and I froze. February 5, 2019. The visions are becoming more frequent. Something is going to happen to me. I took Amanda out of the house while my dad was asleep. She wanted me to go with her, but I needed to know what my dad was hiding. The visions keep playing in my head. I'm being stabbed by someone. It's dark and I think it's outside, but but I can't tell where. I'm not going to school today. I need to find out more. Amanda keeps blowing up my phone, but I don't want to talk about what she saw. I need to focus on discovering more. Dear Diary. I woke up on the floor. I don't know what happened. I didn't see anything coming. The other vision of me being stabbed stopped because I think this is when it happens. The door opened and I saw a large silhouette. I heard a voice saying all of this was my fault and that I should never have been born. It sounded like my dad, but my head is pounding. It's hard to think. I asked him why he was doing this and he said I made everything difficult and was good for nothing. I felt a cold, sharp pain in my stomach. I looked down and saw a knife. My dad had stabbed me. The last thing he said was that it would be better this way, for me to close my eyes and sleep, so I did. I woke up again at 3 a.m. with my dad coming home and had to hide Amanda. Now I know what I have to do. I need to kill my dad before he kills me. This will be my last entry. I will burn this diary because it has all the evidence and my fingerprints. Goodbye, diary and old life. I won't miss you. And to my parents, see you in hell.
The Midnight Market.
I grew up in a small, tranquil town where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. But there was one peculiar place that stood out among the mundane: the Midnight Market. It was a small grocery store that only opened its doors after the sun had set. The locals called it the Midnight Market, and it had a reputation for being shrouded in mystery. Whispers circulated among the townsfolk about strange occurrences at the market. Some said they heard unexplainable noises coming from inside, while others claimed to have seen eerie figures moving in the shadows. Despite the rampant speculation, no one seemed to know for certain what went on behind those doors. The unknown nature of the market piqued my curiosity, and I couldn't resist the urge to find out for myself. My name is Sam, and as a teenager with a thirst for adventure, I decided one Saturday night that it was time to uncover the secrets of the Midnight Market. As I made my way through the quiet, dimly lit streets, my heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The market was located on the outskirts of town, away from the prying eyes of the townspeople, adding to its mysterious allure. When I finally arrived, the market looked unassuming from the outside, with a faded sign hanging above the door and a few dim lights flickering within. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. With a mixture of determination and nervous energy, I pushed open the creaking doors and stepped inside, ready to face the unknown. The closer I got to the market, the more I noticed the eerie details that gave it its unsettling reputation. The dim lights outside flickered erratically, casting long, distorted shadows on the cracked pavement. As I approached the entrance, the automatic doors creaked open slowly, as if they hadn't been used in years, emitting a low, groaning sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, but my curiosity pushed me forward. Stepping inside, I was immediately hit by a wave of cold air that seemed to seep into my bones. The market's interior was dimly lit, with fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered, barely illuminating the narrow, twisting aisles. I couldn't shake the feeling that the store itself was alive, its layout shifting subtly as I moved deeper inside. The shelves were lined with dusty, outdated products. Some items had labels in languages I couldn't recognize, and others looked like they had been sitting there for decades, forgotten and untouched. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay, making it hard to breathe. Every step I took echoed through the empty aisles, the sound amplifying my growing sense of unease. As I ventured further, I noticed something even more disturbing: the other shoppers. They moved in jerky, unnatural motions, almost like puppets on strings. Their eyes were vacant, devoid of any sign of life or awareness. They shuffled aimlessly, occasionally bumping into shelves or one another, but never reacting. It was as if they were trapped in some kind of trance, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me, even though their eyes seemed empty. I tried to stay out of their way, moving cautiously through the labyrinthine aisles. Every corner I turned seemed to lead me deeper into the market's twisted maze. The oppressive silence was occasionally broken by faint, unintelligible whispers that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The longer I stayed, the more the air seemed to press down on me, making it harder to think, harder to breathe. My heart pounded in my chest as I continued my exploration, each step taking me further from the safety of the entrance. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a terrible mistake by coming here. Yet, despite the overwhelming sense of dread, I felt compelled to uncover the market's secrets, driven by a curiosity that refused to be silenced. As I ventured further into the market, the unsettling atmosphere only grew more intense. It was then that I began to notice the other customers more clearly. They moved in jerky, erratic motions, as if they were marionettes being controlled by an invisible puppeteer. Their movements were unnaturally stiff and abrupt, making a soft rustling noise that echoed in the otherwise silent store. Their eyes were the most disturbing part. Each one had a vacant, glassy stare, their pupils dark and hollow. It was as if they were looking right through me, seeing something far beyond the aisles of the market. Every time I caught a glimpse of one of their faces, a chill ran down my spine. There was no recognition, no awareness, just emptiness. I tried to avoid them, ducking into different aisles and taking circuitous routes to stay out of their way. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It wasn't just the customers. It felt like the very walls of the market had eyes. The oppressive silence was occasionally broken by the faintest of whispers, almost too soft to hear, but their eerie cadence sent shivers through me. As I moved deeper into the market, I found myself holding my breath, my senses on high alert. Every sound seemed amplified. The creak of a shelf, the rustle of a package, the soft thud of footsteps. The air felt heavier, more oppressive, as if the market itself was closing in around me. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears as I crept through the narrow aisles. I turned a corner and nearly bumped into one of the customers. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The figure stood there, swaying slightly, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. For a moment, I thought it would grab me, but it just stood there, its empty eyes staring past me. I quickly backed away, my pulse racing, and turned down another aisle, desperately trying to find a way out of this nightmare. The further I went, the more distorted and labyrinthine the market seemed to become. It was as if the aisles were shifting, leading me deeper into the heart of the store. I could feel the customers' eyes on me, even when I couldn't see them, their silent, unseeing gazes tracking my every move. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, with me as the prey. My fear was growing with every passing second, but so was my determination. I had to find out what was happening in this place, no matter how terrifying it was. I just hoped I could find my way back out before it was too late. The moment I turned on my phone's flashlight, the sight that greeted me was nothing short of horrifying. The mannequins, which I had thought were inanimate, had now rearranged themselves into a circle around me. Their faces, pale and expressionless, seemed to come alive with malevolence as their heads slowly turned to face me. The whispers I had heard earlier had grown louder, more insistent, almost like they were emanating directly from the mannequins themselves. I watched in terror as their limbs began to move, jerking and swaying in unnatural ways. It was as if the mannequins were stretching their arms toward me, their fingers elongating with an eerie, sinewy grace. The sound of their joints creaking was agonizingly loud in the oppressive silence of the dark room. The whispers, now more like guttural mutterings, swirled around me, growing louder and more frantic. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave. I darted to the door, slamming against it in a desperate attempt to open it. My heart pounded so violently that it felt as if it might burst from my chest. The door resisted for what felt like an eternity, but then, almost miraculously, it swung open. I didn't wait to see what might happen next. I bolted out of that room, racing through the twisting, confounding aisles of the market. The corridors seemed to stretch on endlessly, each turn leading me deeper into the labyrinthine horror. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted, dodging the grotesque silhouettes of the mannequins that seemed to leer at me from every direction. The market's eerie whispers chased me, echoing in my ears, blending with the pounding of my own heartbeat. Bursting through the front doors of the market, I stumbled into the cool night air, barely able to believe I had escaped. My legs felt like jelly as I ran to my car, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I fumbled with my keys. The moment I was inside and the engine roared to life, I sped away from the market, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something, or someone, following me. As I drove through the darkened streets back to my home, the whispers seemed to cling to me, an invisible presence that refused to let go. I could still hear their murmurs, echoing in my mind with a persistent dread. The sense of terror that had enveloped me in the market stayed with me, casting a shadow over every corner of my life. I swore to myself that I would never return to the midnight market. The fear of what I had witnessed that night haunted me, making every shadow seem ominous and every creak of the floorboards a reminder of the horrors I had narrowly escaped. To this day, I keep my windows locked and my doors bolted tight, haunted by the memories of the market and the unshakable fear that it instilled in me.
The book.
It was a cloudy, silent night when my friends and I decided to explore the old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of our small town. The mansion, with its imposing facade and broken windows, had always been shrouded in sinister rumors. They said it was haunted by the spirit of a woman who had mysteriously disappeared many years ago. There was something about those stories that drew us in, like moths to a flame, and we found ourselves gathered together to uncover the house's secrets. When we arrived, the air was heavy, and the chill seemed to penetrate our bones. The wind howled through the broken windows, and the creaking of the floorboards beneath our feet echoed through the darkened corridors. The atmosphere was saturated with an oppressive feeling, as if the mansion itself were alive and waiting for us. We decided to split up to cover more ground and see what we could find. Each of us took a different path. Some went upstairs, while others descended into the basement. I found myself wandering through the main floor corridors, which were covered in dust and cobwebs. Shadows danced on the walls, forming shapes that seemed to move with each step I took. The fear was palpable in the air, but so was an insatiable curiosity that kept us moving forward. As we explored, the sense that something was amiss grew stronger. There was a presence, a feeling of being watched, that we couldn't shake. The sound of our footsteps blended with the wind whistling through the cracks, and the mansion seemed to have a life of its own, breathing with each of our movements. The atmosphere was thick and oppressive, and the cold never seemed to lift. The mansion had a way of making us feel small and insignificant against its vast, mysterious backdrop. Anticipation and fear mingled in our hearts as we continued our exploration, unaware that the true horror was about to reveal itself. As I wandered through the dimly lit hallways of the mansion, I stumbled upon what seemed to be an old library. The room was cloaked in dust and shadows, with books lining the walls, their spines faded and forgotten. I could barely make out the titles on the spines, their once vibrant colors now muted by the passage of time. My attention was drawn to a peculiar book resting on a pedestal in the center of the room. It was unlike any of the others, bound in dark, worn leather and secured with a rusty lock. My curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. I found a small ornate key hidden among the clutter and managed to unlock the book. Inside, the pages were filled with strange symbols and cryptic enchantments. The writing was unlike anything I'd ever seen, intricate, almost otherworldly. The symbols seemed to dance on the pages, their meaning elusive and unsettling. As I delved deeper into the book, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. A bone-chilling cold settled around me, and I began to hear a faint, whispering voice. It called my name in a way that sent shivers down my spine. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest, and that's when I saw her. The ghostly figure of the missing woman materialized behind me. Her eyes were hollow voids of darkness, and her mouth twisted into a sinister, unsettling smile. The sight was enough to freeze me in terror. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her presence was overwhelming, her cold gaze piercing through me. Desperate to escape, I stumbled backward, but the ghost's outstretched hand reached for me. Her icy fingers brushed against my skin, sending a surge of dread through my entire being. Before I could react, the room seemed to spin, and I felt myself being drawn toward the book. The pages closed with an eerie finality, and the darkness enveloped me. I stood frozen, unable to tear my eyes away from the ghostly apparition before me. The woman's expression was both horrifying and mesmerizing, A twisted grin stretched across her face, while her eyes remained empty, dark voids that seemed to pierce straight through me. As if compelled by some unseen force, the ghost reached out a hand toward me. Her fingers were ghostly pale, almost translucent, and they moved with an unsettling grace. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but no sound emerged from my mouth. The fear was so intense it felt like it was choking me. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming force pulling me toward the book. My body was no longer under my control. It was as though the book had become a black hole, drawing me in with an irresistible, magnetic pull. The feeling of being absorbed was both suffocating and disorienting. I could feel the cold, malevolent presence of the ghost intensify as I was dragged closer to the book. The final moments were a blur of panic and dread. As I was pulled into the book, I glanced back and saw the ghost's terrifying smile grow even wider. Her eyes were fixed on me, and I could see every detail of her malevolent grin as the darkness closed in. The last thing I felt was the chilling touch of her hand against my skin, and then everything went black as the book snapped shut. When I finally regained some semblance of consciousness, I realized I was no longer in the library. Instead, I found myself in a nightmarish version of the mansion. The walls seemed to close in on me, their oppressive presence making it hard to breathe. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the sound of my own footsteps echoing through endless, twisting corridors. The mansion was an ever-shifting maze of terror. Rooms appeared and disappeared at random, and every turn I took only seemed to lead me further into confusion. The once familiar layout of the house had transformed into a labyrinth of despair. Every corridor I ventured down seemed darker and more distorted than the last, with the oppressive silence amplifying my growing sense of dread. Every now and then, I caught glimpses of shadowy figures flitting just out of sight. They seemed to whisper and murmur, their voices melding into an incoherent cacophony that heightened my terror. Each room I stumbled into was filled with old, decaying furniture that seemed to decay further with each passing second. Dusty mirrors lined the walls, reflecting not my own image but the haunting visage of the ghostly woman. Her hollow eyes and sinister smile were a constant reminder of my grim reality. In my desperation, I scrambled to find a way out, but the layout of the mansion seemed to shift with a malevolent will of its own. The more I tried to escape, the more I felt as if the very walls were closing in on me, trapping me in this twisted, endless nightmare. The specter of the ghostly woman lingered at the edge of my vision, her presence a chilling constant in this hellish landscape. Desperation surged through me as I frantically recited the strange incantations from the book. I hoped that by invoking its cryptic symbols, I might find a way out of this horrific realm. Instead, the enchantments seemed to have the opposite effect. The air grew colder, and from the shadows emerged even more terrifying apparitions. Their twisted, anguished faces were a grotesque display of suffering, their eyes reflecting the same despair I felt. As I stumbled through this nightmarish landscape, the walls began to blur and warp. Before I knew it, I was back in the library, the same room where my ordeal had begun. But something was fundamentally different. The once familiar surroundings felt alien, and a deep chill settled over me. I glanced at my reflection in a nearby mirror and was horrified to see that my eyes were now hollow and empty, and my mouth was twisted into that same sinister smile of the ghostly woman. The realization hit me like a wave of icy dread. I had become the new guardian of the book. My transformation was complete, and my fate was sealed. I was now part of the cursed cycle that had trapped so many before me. As the book lay open on the floor, waiting patiently for its next victim, I felt a chilling sense of purpose. The cycle would continue, and I would be here, ready to lure the next curious soul into the same dark nightmare from which I had only just escaped. The mansion's shadows seemed to stretch and writhe in anticipation, and the book, forever cursed, remained vigilant, eager for its next prey.